Welcome to Fintech Chatter News, presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Follow us on your favorite podcast player or Fintech Chatter TV on YouTube.
Welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where Fintech leaders join me for a chat. I'm Dexter Cousins, and today I'm joined by two friends of the podcast, Toby Norton-Smith from X15 and Jaco Veldsman from Paytron. Toby came on the show in August to talk about the X15 Xccelerate program, which Paytron were announced the winners of a couple of weeks back. And I thought I'd invite them both on the show to talk about the experience. Toby, Jaco, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Dex, on another sunny Sydney day.
Yeah, cheers, Dexter. It's good to be back, man.
Great. Well, thanks for joining me. As I mentioned in that intro, the Xccelerate program, Toby, you were on the show just a couple of months back. And I guess, we kind of at the time, in fact, I'm going to go back to kind of when you and I were first introduced to each other, maybe it's 2.5 years ago now. And we were talking about the types of businesses and founders that you wanted to kind of attract to X15. And I think I might have mentioned or referenced, look who's charging as a potential. And I remember meeting Jaco and Francois, maybe it's 2 years back now, and thinking, hey, these guys remind me of look who's charging. So it's kind of great to see that, my kind of thinking was aligned with you guys. But I thought it'd be really cool to really talk about the experience that you've both been through. And Toby, I guess, from your side as well, how going through these kind of programs is now starting to refine the thinking from X15 as to what makes, a great partner or applicant for the program.
We did have that conversation 2.5 years ago, Dexter. We were just getting ready to launch X15. So we're still a work in progress, and these programs are a way for us to make sure we understand where we can create value for the fintech and broader tech community and where we don't have a right to play. So, the Xccelerate program we discussed last time, it's our short, sharp investment program that helps early stage founders understand what the pathway to partnering with a large corporate looks like. CBA being one of those obvious pathways that we'd explore with them. That's the sort of question we think we can help some ventures with. It's not a question that is on strategy for lots of ventures. And so the program wouldn't be for them. But for those that want to get their head into that space, we have lived that experience for 2.5 years, bringing ventures through that plug into CBA and are sort of enterprise ready. And that's what we hope to offer through the program.
Yeah. When you were last on the show, we did a little bit of a call out to people because you were accepting applications. How many did you end up inviting onto the Accelerator program?
Yeah, so we had, a little over 50 applications, which doesn't sound sort of mind-boggling. We actually thought that was a great number because we were quite sharp around what the program was about. To be pre-Series A, but have an in-market product or prototype. You needed to be Australian incorporated and solving in Australian payments. So you apply all of those lenses. We had a little over 50. Of those, we invited 15 to participate in the program, and then that sharpened throughout the month down to a sort of final 4, finalists for the pitch night at the end of the program.
So, Jaco, you were on the show, I think, in June, and it's great to have you on, hearing about all the success that you'd shared with us in a fairly short time. But I have to say, I was a little bit surprised when I seen you on the program because I thought, hey, you guys have got all this success. Why would a program like X15 Xccelerate be something that you're pursuing? So I wondered if you could share with us and put me out of my misery as to what it was that kind of really intrigued you about, because it is a bit of an investment of time and energy going into these things.
Yeah, it's a really good question and something that we actually carefully considered prior. And I think, Dexter, it comes down to understanding what is the market that you're in. You'll hear me talk as well in the industry. Something that I really kind of have started to focus on, and for us as a company that we focus on, is something called what business are you in and what's the business that you're really in. And when we came to the conclusion that what's the business that we're really in is that we're a workflows company that actually have multiple utilities and things at the background that we partner with our workflows to solve the AP process, to solve the spend management and control process. What it became very clear to us is that X15 and the Commonwealth Bank as a potential partner is the ideal place to work with. It's one of the ideal places to actually start working with. We actually started to understand our data a lot better. And it became clear that we have shared customers. And it became really clear to us that we actually are in a position, where if you are thinking about the problem in the right way, working directly with a bank instead of competing is a much better path for both sides. And actually you can provide much more value to the end customer. So when we saw X15's initial launch, we weren't sure if the alignment was there, and we were hesitant at first. And speaking to the team at X15, they've been tremendously helpful and in helping us understand what it is that they want to achieve. And when we heard, what is the path that they're on, certainly from their side, they're not investing in us because they want to give us capital necessarily right now. That is not the ideal kind of starting relationship. They see value in what we have to offer, and we see value in what we can work with them, and we see value in what they have to offer. So the whole offering to us became really clear that X15, in the way to think of the Xccelerate program in particular, was actually being in a position to help us bring product to market to our customers in a way that delights them and delights the bank's customers. And there is no other path. If you think about it, like you can take 3, 4, 5, 7 years to kind of have this opportunity to do this in a way that actually is in an ecosystem that is built to be successful. So it really is Xccelerate, right? It's the acceleration of working together. And that became very clear very early on. And the more we understood of the program, and it was actually very well run in the sense that they had this multi-step process where they started to kind of explain to us more and more what it is that they want to achieve as a bank, what is Xccelerate supposed to achieve. It became a no-brainer.
Now, Toby, you talked there about 50 applicants, whittling that down to 15. What was it about the kind of the 15 that you chose that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not too dissimilar to what Jaco was talking about then. One of the differentiators, of course, is really sharpening on what the business models of those ventures are. Do you genuinely see it as one for which, distribution via a big bank or a corporate, or a big bank or a corporate becoming one of your key customers, is absolutely on strategy? I think everyone can broadly rationalize some form of a relationship with a big corporate. But if you sort of dig a little bit deeper, it's sort of, I can't remember Jaco's exact phrase, but the sort of second follow-up question on, no, but what really do you want to achieve, or what is your business and does that work, was probably what delineated the ones that we thought we could take through. Generically speaking, I mean, the diversity of business models that come through when you set a problem like sort of helping shape the future of Australian payments meant, we had ventures in the final 15 from all sorts of areas as the most broadly defined sort of payments ecosystem you could imagine.
What were some of the big problems that the applicants or the people on the program were trying to solve? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a payments expert by any means, but the way I think about payments is their infrastructure, right? Or, and often utility infrastructures, which means, in some ways, if you get them right, the upside's enormous. The barriers to entry are very high to get it right, but they do sort of cut across the entire economy, right? Payments, they clip the ticket on the economy. So in some ways, I think a lot of the ventures were solving for problems or emerging parts of the economy and how they could be better solved, with payments, or better served by payments. So I'll give you some examples. Lots of interesting ventures in the sort of how to serve the creator, the social and the gig economy use cases. So I think about, lots of broader ways of accepting payments, both on the terminal side via soft POS, on the input side via, other forms of value like crypto,
helping, with payments bridges in more social contexts. So sort of how you can build, checkouts into social profiles and clickable links to help people with more sort of casual and one-off payments. Really interesting innovation from one of the finalists, UPay, on sort of what they call multiplayer checkout. So the world in which, particularly in sort of certain communities, you may have, tightly knit communities who want to sort of pay it forward or buy each other gifts or in gifting kids and parents, for example. So a lot of the innovations, I think, were just sort of reflecting where parts of the, particularly digital economy were growing. And then, I think underlying that, pretty exciting time in Australian payments. I think with the arrival of Pay2, the uptake of MPP, there's a lot of opportunity there. And by the way, I should not walk past one other thematic, which was payments drive a lot of cost and a lot of complexity inside organizations, particularly larger corporates where, systems don't all talk to each other, and, managing, keeping an eye on expenses and use of payments, but also how you process them is a big challenge. And, Paytron were one of a few different businesses that are looking in that very, very broad space, which I would call sort of, workflow optimization. It is a very big opportunity space.
Yeah, I guess given the economic kind of challenges that, globally as well as locally, and then you consider that small business is the engine room of the Aussie economy, it's mission critical now that we start to look at, as a small business owner, saying this as well, that we look at more effective ways and optimal ways of supporting those businesses.
But I mean, I think it's got potential right across the spectrum of business sizes. One thing I'm always quick to point out, banks, for example, have very large profit pools, and there's a lot of fantastic fintechs that are looking to put, competition and pressure on those. Banks have even larger operating cost bases. A lot of that operating cost base is made up of people who are doing processes, and a lot of them in a bank are to do with payments. And so the sorts of innovations that companies like Paytron are demonstrating, I think the applicability and the size of opportunity to streamline operations and, ultimately to drive better experiences for customers is pretty cool. So yes, small and medium enterprise, but, one of the CBA execs who participated on the final night, who runs technology for the large, the institutional end of the bank, she had some phrase on the night which was sort of, you had me at workflows, as in so much opportunity even inside a big bank for a service like Paytron's.
Jaco, so I'm kind of going back to the experience of going through the program. I guess first up, what were your kind of preconceptions going in? And then having completed it, what would you say was the biggest kind of surprise or pleasant thing that you hadn't factored for when kind of putting the application in?
Other than the food.
The food was great, actually. I ate way too much of that event. I like the sliders. Just stick with the sliders. That's a good one.
If there's any startup founders out there who are starving, that's another good reason to go on.
It's a good place to go. I think Dexter, if you look at X15's Xccelerate and just X15 in general, they've almost been in existence almost exactly the same period as we have. And in anything, when you're starting to kind of innovate, you get feedback and you learn, where the pain points are and where things are. And, you look at X15's journey. When they launched, I thought it's always been there. It kind of I just thought it's something that I haven't seen before. I didn't realize that actually, the program's only been running that short space. And you can tell as an outsider that they've learned a lot, and they've actually adapted and learned from mistakes and from big successes. And what became quite clear to me is that they're starting to find out what exactly is the game that they're in and what is the area that they want to play in. And my preconceptions was, it's a big corporate. I've worked at Commonwealth Bank, right? And I actually had really good years there between 2008 and 11. So it's been a long time. It's been a long time coming. So I know what it's like. And a big corporate's got pros and cons, like very big pros and cons. Like it's a mature business. There's reasons why certain things are done in a certain way, and there's processes in place. So I came in with an open mindset that there's certain things that we want to achieve. So my preconception was, well, how is this going to help them? How is this going to help us? I was trying to kind of continuously thinking, why is the Commonwealth Bank, and in particular X15 as a venture arm, why are they interested in doing this? What do they want to do? And what are we going to do? So my preconceptions was like, well, I'm trying to find out what is the path to market here.
Yeah.
Especially considering for us, we're in a rush, right? As a fintech, we've got a lot of things to get going. What became really clear to me during the program, and to answer the question, is I was worried initially that it might be a very long time and I couldn't see the path to market. What was incredible was the response was spot on. So I spoke to a couple of the people there, in particular, some of the executive and team members on the X15 side. They mentioned to me that one of the benefits that you'll get from this program that you probably won't get in years to come is access, and access to help solve problems. Like, what the problems are that you want to solve, especially in a fintech. There's always good things you can be doing if you work alongside a bank. And what this has delivered in spades is access. To the point that it will probably take us 5 years to replicate the kind of access that we get.
Yeah.
Or a lot of money and a lot of patience and a lot of people. You just won't get this ability to work this closely and talk to the right people that they've introduced to us in an extremely short space of time, and happening in the background as we speak.
Yeah.
It's been worth it in every sense.
And so I guess with that kind of exposure, what you're experiencing now is what the real problems are, not what you think the problems might be. And you're hearing it straight from the people who've got the problems, and be able to sit with them and try and fix, find solutions.
Well, I'll give you a small example, right? I asked that difficult question while the program was going. I was trying to figure out, like, why are they doing this? What are they actually doing? Speaking to some of the bank executives as well that they introduced us to. You got the answer straight from the horse's mouth. No mucking around, no fluff, no nonsense. This is the problem we're trying to solve. We're going to play open cards and transparent with you guys because we want to help solve it. And that's why we're here. We want to solve these problems. And we realized, like, the problem that we need help with, they can solve. And the problem they need help with, we can solve, right? Mm. And what was really exciting about that is just realizing that aha moment is like, hang on, this is a win-win scenario. This is not a win-lose scenario for either party.
Yeah, I mean, I feel I weirdly need to almost pour some cold water on Jaco's enthusiasm, because he's been very complimentary of the program. And I, do feel very, proud that, ventures and founders like Jaco are now, recognizing that. I think to frame that up, what I'm confident we're doing is helping Xccelerate finding the right people and the right executives, in a corporate, in this case in CPA, but it could be others, to make the decision on whether there's strategic opportunity and to sort of pursue that. Yeah. There is a second question, a very big question, which is how quickly can you then execute and actually make that happen? And I think that's where I'd put the note of just like appropriate caution in. We're 2.5 years in. We've got, a number of proof points that I could talk underwater about with our ventures. But, even say when we started X15, we were already starting to build Unloan. That came to market in May this year. When we started X15, we'd already built and launched Home-In, our digital conveyancing business. It's only now really starting to crank with its integrations with CBA in terms of, high volume of customers that are taking up the service. So it's not there's no single switch on the actual execution of it. But I do think it's, one of the fascinating things when you do these programs, and one of the fascinating insights I always have when meeting fintechs and more broadly the tech community, is sort of asking them who else they're speaking to, in other banks, for example, and the diversity of answers speaks to like a real problem. Yeah, someone's got it wrong, because you'll speak 3 businesses all competing in the same space, and they're all engaging at different levels or different areas of organizations, and it just speaks to the significant challenge of finding the right people. And a clue, they typically do start at the top, the right people, but they're not the people that can make the execution happen. So you can have a great idea, great alignment from a senior executive. But if, and this is what the program offers, if that venture doesn't have sufficient maturity around whatever, how it thinks about how it's meeting its financial crimes obligations, for example, in payments, or how it's thinking about the resiliency of its technology infrastructure to a bank grade standard, if they're not getting ahead of those problems, the execution won't happen because the middle tier of a corporate will stop it from happening. So your sort of sweet spot for me is, you want that top level of engagement, which we're very fortunate to have in X15. But you then need to, where our experts in the X15 team are thinking ahead, is what are going to be the critical path items where this venture needs to sort of up its game. If you actually,
yeah. I mean, look, I'd say to that is a very, very good point. I'm not sitting here going, this is a slam dunk. Everything's great, like, off to the sunset and everything's wonderful. But I can tell you, I don't see it being any easier than this, right? This is the slipstream. If you're going to kind of be able to kind of work together and kind of try and work together, and I'm not saying we're the only portfolio company or people that were there that they would work with. But what's interesting is that before we won on that evening, I'd felt it was worthwhile. I would have walked away and gone like, you know what? Now at least I know who to call for what. I don't have to go to John, who refers me to Sally, who refers me to John, who refers me to Sally, right? I can just go directly to Louise and she says no and yes. And it's the end of the story, as opposed to kind of like weeks and weeks of kind of round and round she goes. Because I've got many friends in Commonwealth Bank, and frankly, many of them can't answer the questions I have because it's a big organization, right? It's how many people are you now, Toby, in the entire group?
The numbers vary, but often you hear around 40,000.
All right, 40,000 people, right? They cannot possibly know what the other guy is doing, all 40,000 possible of them.
Yeah, really good point. Now, talking about the final and being announced, you mentioned there that it was going to be, regardless of the outcome, it was going to be worthwhile. But I'm pretty certain you would have wanted to have won. Who of the other finalists were you kind of nervous and thinking, I'm not sure we've got enough to beat those guys?
I was. The problem is you try and temper your expectations as you go through like an event like this, because you want to do your best, and I try to keep an open mind. But I must be honest, like I looked at the finalists, there could have been anybody, and there was a couple of other people that didn't even make it in that I would have even kind of like say, wow, right? There were some really good people in that, and frankly, some of these things often, it's great to win. It is really, really nice and fantastic. I think the toughest part about it is you look around it and going, there are so many ways of solving problems and so many different things. And fintech and finance and tech is not a winner takes all. It just isn't. Mm. And even in business, even in people that are directly competing with you, it's not a winner takes all. In tech, I think that is slightly different. You can have a winner takes all approach. But in fintech and in finance in particular, it just doesn't work because everybody's problem is different. And people have different kind of flavors and things that they want to achieve. And, I think on that evening, it's like, there were some good people there, man. Like, yeah. And I was really impressed. And the presentations were slick. They were really well pulled off. So
awesome. And Toby, from your side, who were some of the other standouts for you?
Yeah, obviously all of the finalists were standouts for us. We had, a well-known fintech cape, phenomenal business, sort of approaching in some ways a broadly similar problem area, but I view them very much as like card-based expense management capability. Ryan and the team have made phenomenal progress since we first met them. They're having a number of follow-on conversations within the bank. A really cool service. In fact, one that we're looking very closely at for whether X15 itself uses it. I think that'd be quite a healthy practice to have all our team on with that expense management module. So that was cool. Maybe just the other two finalists, UPay I touched on. This is the multiplayer checkout. Really cool story that the founder tells about the sort of part of the genesis for UPay was sort of a little piece of research that was done in the early days of one of the big e-commerce, Australian e-commerce businesses that launched sort of 10 years ago. They're in their first couple of years. They're really taking off. They asked their banker to do some analytics on who their most loyal customers are. And this is, I think I can say it, the iconic, right? And then the answer comes back from the analytics team. Oh, your most loyal customers are sort of 55 to 60-year-old men. And sort of everyone blinked and got a little bit confused. Like, that doesn't feel right.
Daddy's credit card.
Yeah, there you go. You worked it out. So that was what was happening. And so really cool insight into this concept of multiplayer checkout, which actually, from a more conservative bank posture can also be helpful, right? Because, to the extent that someone, you're stopping people borrowing credit cards, you're stopping someone who, maybe it's asking someone to gift you something. You don't have to give them your credit card details. They don't need to know your shipping address. So something really interesting there. They had amazing early metrics of virality in how they're taking off. So again, follow-up conversations are occurring inside the bank. And then the last one, Pasolo, the last finalist, just, staggering metrics that remind you how small the Australian market size is. They are a sort of social links and payments bridge company. And so all about sort of providing clickable links for, the creator economy, but then actually having a little payments module embedded. Their metrics were enormous because they're a global from day one business. Again, huge problem space that, all banks would be interested in. But also naturally a very global business. So I haven't really narrowed it down there, Dex, but that gives you a flavour of the diversity of businesses that are out there in the payment space.
Now, this is a question to both of you. It's been a tough year this year for fintech. It's almost kind of bipolar to last year. What was your kind of general sense, through the program of optimism, opportunity, and where the industry's at right now?
It's exactly the same as when it was way too optimistic. It's way too pessimistic now, as much as it was way too optimistic a few years ago, right? Like, I've been in trading and hedge fund world and algorithmic trading for most of my life. The market ebbs and flows, and you need to look at the trend. You talk about mean reversion, as a concept. We are somewhere between finding out where the low is of people's pessimism at this stage towards actually mean reverting back and realizing things are never as good as what they seem and they're never as bad as what they seem.
Yeah.
Right? And right now I was like, well, I'm a little bit disappointed by how fickle people are in this space. You would imagine people have grown like a little bit of a stomach by now, like, being in the market a few years. If you look around me, people are kind of scared. There's a couple of fintechs that aren't getting the extra funding. There's a couple of people that aren't moving to the next stage, which are fantastic businesses out there. I know a couple of them, that they've got a month or two left, and, it's going to be all over. And I would say it will be a real shame for the services out there for some of these businesses to miss it, because it's just timing on some of them. So, I'm hoping that as an industry, people kind of regather a little bit of confidence and just move on. You look at some of the news out of the US, which is horrific, is coming out. You look at Brex, just let go 15% of their staff last week. That was the poster child of effective new fintech and the new way forward. So as you get through this news and as the news gets flushed out, it's kind of like, take your bad medicine and move on. Right? All of us had to take some bad medicine because, frankly, things were frothy, right? And now it's back to basics. Yeah. And I'm quite encouraged. Like, I just want to get it over with and move on effectively. But the industry looks like there's still a little bit of flushing out to do, and it will happen. And if it happens, it happens.
And Toby, from your side, kind of how are you feeling about things?
I mean, I think that was a pretty good summary. Everyone's got slightly different tweaks on it. Look, I'd say maybe some things that hopefully will endure from this, whatever we like to call it, correction in the last year. I think, being able to answer straightforward questions on their economic model. I think, we possibly last year got to a stage where it was a little bit all about the vibe. And so I hope some of that holds true, so it protects people against, I'm sure there's an algorithmic word for the sort of volatility of fluctuations. Think quickly about Australia. Most of these models are digital. So that means you have to acquire customers effectively through a duopoly that encourages you to bid against your competitor's keyword, which means customers are never cheap. So then question number 2, I'm acquiring customers at a very expensive price. How can I lower that? I think some of the lessons are, for some direct-to-consumer fintechs, the enduring importance of brand. A brand that not necessarily has to be cool, but has to be broadly appealing, which, I know isn't always on trend, but Australia is a small market, so you need to reach as many of your target segment as you can. I think it also speaks to the enduring importance of balance sheet. If you're talking about fintech models, we're seeing right now, we're very privileged. Unloan, our digital mortgage business is, it's actually a very friendly market for it right now, but only because it's got brand and balance sheet support. So I think some of those lessons, I hope, probably do endure, but I'm sure JV's right. Overall markets always overreact one way or the other. I think the last thing that I'd put out there, again, it ties back to my earlier comment on sort of, cost bases of big corporates and banks in particular. I still see tremendous opportunity for sort of any Australian fintech or tech business that's solving for reducing the cost of operations, reducing the cost of regulation, reg tech businesses. I think there's some of the areas we could have great export businesses because Australia's a strong and well-regulated system. So I still see lots of opportunity there, and that's not going to go away in any economic cycle.
And so have you just given away the theme for the next Xccelerate program there, Toby?
No, I haven't. No, we're still debating that. It won't be until sort of, September next year-ish or so. But that could be a good one.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, Jaco, I guess, kind of looking forward to this next 12 months. We had you on the show in June and, you were kind of, there was a lot of great stuff going on. Now you've got this as well. Have you kind of had to revise your expectations of the next 12 months? And does winning the Xccelerate program kind of change the complexion of things for you?
I don't think it changes our ambition at all. Like, you have to also kind of keep yourself grounded in a way. There's a lot of hard work to go and do. And at the end of the day, the kind of things that we need to go and put in place is becoming quite clear to us. I think what's happened since June for us, Dexter, is like we've finally kind of put ourselves in a position where our product now is becoming quite clear to people. What is the market that we're going after? And you look at the numbers, are accelerating. Our clients are accelerating. The signups are accelerating. This will be another record month. Like we've had successful record months, one after the other. And I think what's encouraging by October in particular is people are willing to actually pay for our product in a big way. And, our feedback is we can charge a lot more. And people, when your clients are telling you, listen, you can charge a lot more than what you're charging. And they're very, very happy with the service. And we haven't had any attrition. We don't have churn. We're not losing customers at all. I think we've lost one customer over the last 4 months, considering the amount of signups that we've had. The encouraging part for us now is just to kind of bunker down, right? Is go and take this, refine the product. There's still enormous amounts of feedback that we're getting. We're about to announce major partnerships with people that should come out over the next few months. I think our acceleration into kind of more partners and people that are wanting to work with us are seeing the value. We're starting to sign up larger customers, larger businesses. What is helping in that sense is kind of these relationships all help, right? Because people outsource a lot of their thinking and kind of, is it safe? They've been here 2 years, but is it a safe place to do business with? And the more time goes by, that's the value of brand, right? Is the fact that people start to recognize you. So what is exciting for us about this entire the way it's playing out is that we just bunker down. It's taking care of itself. Just focus on the customer, listen to the customer, get their feedback, what they want to achieve, and go and solve their problems. And that's what we're just still doing. Yeah.
Awesome. And Toby, for X15, it's this kind of period that we're going through. In the past, we've seen large corporates use this as an excuse to kind of forget about innovation, forget about investment, and kind of focus on cost control and process improvement. What's your kind of optimism for the future? And do you are you getting the sense that the X15 kind of strategy and the model that you've got now is kind of seen and embraced by the bank as something that's mission critical to the kind of future of the bank?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I do, Dexter. Look, we from day one, I think, share a similar phrase to, I think Ingrid uses over at Woolworths W23, which is, you need to be strategically aligned, but operationally uncoupled. We run slightly different businesses, but that just triple focus on making sure that from the CBA board down, from the CBA strategy down, you can articulate how you can contribute to that. Now, that's not always the coolest or the funnest thing to do, but that's what, CBA is our sole LP, if you like. So getting that right, I think we're really clear on that. We've had the privilege of, there's been a transition of chair at CBA, and we've had the opportunity both with, of course, the outgoing, but now the ingoing sort of chair to speak to our model. So we're feeling pretty confident, or we're feeling pretty clear on the role that we've got. I can't speak to whether that's mission critical. I can say that we've been focusing quite hard on our current portfolio in terms of, we don't speak to our numbers, but we've been we're well invested in them. And we're actually just starting to think about sort of opening up our portfolio and business development a bit more. It may be a really timely time to do it. And we just feel we've created enough capacity and success in those first ventures to get going again. So feeling pretty confident.
Look, you've also created a lot of credibility, right? I think when you and I kind of first started speaking, me being me, I was fairly forthright, as I usually am. And, I think what was kind of really striking about me was how aware, cognizant, and empathetic you were to, I guess, kind of some of the things that had gone on, not just, I guess in general throughout the industry, as to how banks and kind of fintech startups were engaging with each other. And, to your credit, I think you've taken all of the feedback on board from everybody, and you've gone out and you have spoken to everybody and kind of continued to refine that. And I think it kind of speaks volumes that the caliber of finalists that you're getting, as I mentioned at the beginning, surprised to see Paytron on there because they're successful, outside of the program. So I think it shows, it shows a lot, right? That the kind of, I think the strategy that you've had and that clarity that you've had around the types of businesses, the types of founders, and how that would integrate into the bank is really, it's great to see. And I've always been probably one of the biggest critics of how the banks have gone on in the past, and I think it's, I'm very happy to be eating humble pie.
Dexter, I just want to add something there. Like, I think all of us can eat humble pie, right? Our original product sucked. It's when you learn and you adapt and you change, right? That's the perfection. That's what's important. Is I don't think it's having an opinion about a certain thing at a certain point in time. You talk to Toby as well. I think he would tell you they've come light years from their original, their original offering. And frankly, it's feedback like yourselves. And this is not trying to kind of, make you feel good. I'm actually saying it's because people care that they give you feedback that you can get better at what you do. Our original product, like way back versus now, is light years away, man. It's not even remotely the same thing. So frankly, if the old product and the old offering that X15 was doing worked now, then you can eat humble pie. If they've adapted and they've gotten better and changed it, then, well, really, you can argue you were right.
Good call. So keep the feedback coming in all directions, everyone.
Well, chaps, thanks for joining me today. It's been fascinating to find out about the whole program, and really cool to hear, the impact that it's had on you guys at Paytron. And also great to see the kind of involvement of the program from your side as well, Toby. If people want to find out more about X15, where's the best place for them to go?
X, spelled X, 15, spelled 15, ventures.com.au.
And Jaco, where can people find out more about Paytron?
Paytron.com.
Cool. Thanks for joining me, guys. And thanks for listening. You can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're coming back to the show, thanks so much for your support. And if this is your first time listening, make sure to hit follow and leave us a review. Until the next episode, stay safe. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. We find world-class talent to build world-class Fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.